My brother added himself to Mom's deed to help with bills. I found our childhood home on Zillow at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I want to tell you exactly what I was doing when my life turned upside down. It was a Tuesday, 11-something at night. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Columbus, eating leftover pad thai out of the container, still in my work clothes because I'd gotten home late and just hadn't changed. Laptop open, half working on a quarterly report due Thursday, half watching some documentary on Netflix I wasn't really following. Normal Tuesday, boring Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday you forget existed by the following weekend. My phone buzzed, Zillow Alert. I should explain why I had a Zillow Alert set on my mom's address, because I know how that sounds. It's not as weird as it seems. Mom had been in and out of the hospital for about 4 months at that point. Serious cardiac situation, nothing simple. And somewhere around month 2, I'd started doing what I always do when I'm anxious, which is research. I'm operations analyst. I work with data for a living. When things feel out of control, I build tracking systems. I set up monitors. It's not the healthiest coping mechanism, but it's mine. So I'd put a Zillow Alert on Mom's house. Partly out of curiosity about property values, partly because I'd been quietly thinking about whether we'd eventually need to sell to cover medical costs, and partly just because, I don't know. It made me feel like I had eyes on something when I couldn't be there in person. I was not expecting the alert to tell me the house was listed. Active listing, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,847 square feet. Crestwood Drive, Dayton, Ohio. Asking price, $289,000. Posted 47 minutes ago. I put down the pad thai. I stared at the listing for maybe 30 seconds without really processing it. Then, and I don't know why I did this because I've known that address since I was 6 years old, I opened Google Maps and typed it in. The satellite image came up. There it was, the maple tree in the front yard we used to climb. The concrete driveway with the diagonal crack Dad always meant to fix. Mom's flower bed along the front porch that she's tended for 30 years. For sale, by owner. Mom was in room 412 at Miami Valley Hospital. She'd been there for 11 days. She had no idea her house was on Zillow. I was 100% certain of that, which meant there was exactly one person who could have done this. I called Derek. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Texted, call me right now. Then I sat there at my kitchen table with the pad thai going cold. And I did what I do. I started thinking through what I actually knew. And more importantly, what I could prove. Let me give you the full picture, because the background is everything here. Mom's name is Carol. 67 years old, retired school administrator, sharp and independent her whole life, until her heart started giving her trouble about 8 months ago. Arrhythmia at first, some medication adjustments, a couple of ER visits. Then in January, she had a more serious episode, ended up in the ICU for a few days, and after that things got complicated. More specialists, more procedures, the kind of ongoing medical situation where you stop counting appointments and just try to stay afloat week to week. The house on Crestwood Drive has been in our family since 1991. Dad bought it the year my brother Derek was born. Solid older colonial in a decent Dayton neighborhood. Nothing fancy but well-maintained, fully paid off about 12 years ago. When Dad died in 2019, it passed cleanly to Mom. Her name on the deed, full stop. Derek is my older brother. 39, lives about 20 minutes from Mom in Dayton. Works in HVAC sales. And look, I want to be fair here, because I spent a long time after all of this trying to figure out when exactly things went wrong with him. He wasn't always like this. Growing up, he was just a regular older brother, kind of annoying, kind of protective, normal stuff. Even into adulthood, we were reasonably close. Called each other on holidays, got together at Mom's for Christmas, that kind of relationship. Not best friends, but solid. The shift happened gradually. I think it started when Dad got sick before he died. There was an inheritance conversation that happened then. One I wasn't really part of. And I think Derek came away from it with certain expectations that didn't fully materialize. I don't know the details. What I know is that after Dad passed, Derek started paying more attention to Mom's finances, asking questions, volunteering to help her manage things. Mom is independent, doesn't love asking for help, but she was grieving and tired, and it seemed sweet at the time. He'd drive her to appointments, help her balance her checkbook, sit with her when she got her taxes done. I live in Columbus, 2 hours away. I made it back when I could, but I wasn't there every week. Derek was. And I think somewhere in there he started seeing himself as the one doing the real work, the one who deserved something for it. I think that's how he justified what came next. I'm not inside his head, but that's my best read on it. About 6 weeks before Mom's hospitalization in January, she mentioned to me on the phone that Derek had suggested she add him to the deed. His reasoning, at least the version he gave her, was that if anything happened to her, it would make managing the property much easier. No probate, no delays, just a smooth transfer of practical control so he could handle things. He framed it as protecting her, keeping things simple. Mom is smart. She hesitated. She told me about it, sort of casually. The way you mentioned something that's sitting a little uneasy but you haven't fully decided what to do with yet. I told her I didn't love it. I said I thought we should talk to an estate attorney before she changed anything on the deed. She said she'd think about it. Then she had the cardiac episode and ended up in the hospital, and we had about 40 more urgent things to deal with. And I set that conversation aside, filed it under things to revisit when everything calmed down. That was my only real mistake in this whole story, because while I was busy coordinating with her doctors and handling insurance paperwork and driving back and forth between Columbus and Dayton, Derek had taken Mom to the county recorder's office about 3 weeks before her hospitalization and walked her through adding him as a joint tenant with right of survivorship. Her signature is on the document. She signed it. I'm not saying she didn't. What I'm saying is she signed it in a moment of vulnerability, after months of Derek framing himself as her protector and positioning himself as the responsible one. She probably thought it was the same thing as naming him in a will, a just-in-case measure, a formality. What it actually meant, legally, was that Derek now had co-ownership rights, the right to act on the property, to list it, to sell it, or try to, without her knowledge, while she lay in a hospital bed 11 days into a post-procedure recovery with monitoring leads on her chest. Derek called me back at 12:43 in the morning. I had spent the previous hour and 43 minutes not sleeping. I had pulled up the county property records online. I had found the deed amendment, dated 3 weeks before Mom went into the hospital. I had downloaded the full Zillow listing, photos, description, the agent contact, everything. I had made a folder on my desktop called simply Derek, and I had started filling it. I'm an analyst. This is what I do. You give me a problem, I build a file. When he called, I picked up on the first ring and I didn't say hello. I said, "Tell me about the Zillow listing." There was a pause, a specific kind of pause, not confused, not innocent. The pause of someone recalibrating. "I was gonna call you," he said. "It's almost 1 a.m. I know. Look, I've been talking to a realtor, and I think we need to have a serious conversation about Mom's situation. The medical bills are piling up, and the house is just sitting there, and—" "Derek!" I stopped him. "She's in the hospital. She doesn't know about this listing." "Does she?" Another pause. "I'm handling it," he said. "Does she know?" "I'm going to talk to her." "She doesn't know." I said it flat, not a question. "You listed her house for $289,000 and she doesn't know." "It's my house too," he said. "My name is on the deed." And there it was. He said it with a certain confidence, the confidence of someone who has thought this through, who maybe talked to someone about it, who believes he has legal standing and is prepared to use it. "Yeah," I said. "I saw that." "When did that happen exactly?" He started explaining. Same story he'd given Mom, protecting her interests, making things simple. Nobody was trying to do anything underhanded. I let him talk. I didn't argue. I just listened and thought about the folder on my desktop and what else I needed to put in it. "Take the listing down," I said when he finished. "I don't think that's—" "Tonight, Derek. Take it down tonight. And don't do anything else until we talk to Mom, in person, together." He said he'd think about it. I told him thinking about it wasn't the answer I needed. He said fine. He'd pause the listing. I said pause wasn't the same as remove. He said he'd remove it. I don't know if I believed him, but it didn't matter. I had already screenshotted everything and the screenshots were in the folder. I did not sleep that night. The next morning I drove to Dayton. I want to tell you I went straight to the hospital. I didn't. I'm not proud of that, but I want to be honest. I went to a copy shop first. I needed to print things and I needed them printed clearly and organized before I did anything else. Documents from the county recorder's office. The deed amendment. A printout of the Zillow listing with the timestamp showing it had gone live at 10:54 p.m. A 2-page timeline I'd put together with dates and sources. Then I drove to the hospital. Mom was sitting up in bed eating breakfast when I came in. Tired but decent spirits. The procedure had gone well. Her numbers were improving. Doctors were cautiously optimistic about discharge within the week. She was happy to see me. She asked why I hadn't called ahead. I sat down next to her bed and I told her, as calmly and carefully as I could, what I had found the night before. I watched her face go through about 4 different things in the space of 10 seconds. Confusion first. Then a dawning kind of recognition. Then something that looked like it might become embarrassment. And then, this is the part I keep coming back to, anger. Clear, cold, focused anger. The kind that doesn't raise its voice. "He listed it," she said. "Yes." While I'm in here. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I need to make some calls. And she reached for her phone with the steadiness of a woman who spent 30+ years managing school systems and is absolutely not someone you want working against you. I handed her the printed documents. She read through them without saying anything. When she finished, she put them face down on the tray table and looked out the window for a long moment. I thought it was like a will, she said quietly. He explained it like a will. I know. He said it just meant he could help manage things if I wasn't able to. I know. That's not what it means. No, I said, it's not. Here's where I need to explain something about joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Because this is exactly what Derek was banking on and exactly what undid him. Adding someone as a joint tenant does give them co-ownership rights. Derek wasn't wrong about that. He had the legal right to list the property. What he did not have was the right to sell it unilaterally, not without the other owner's signature on the closing documents. Mom would have had to sign at closing, and Mom, who now knew exactly what was happening, was not going to sign anything. So the listing was theater. He could put it on Zillow all he wanted. He could take calls from buyers. He could even accept an offer in principle. But the moment it came to an actual sale, Mom's signature was required. And if she refused, which she absolutely would, the deal collapsed. Derek had created a situation where he had the appearance of control without the substance of it, which, looking back, tracks with everything else. But here's the thing. The damage in situations like this isn't just in what legally happens. A listing on Zillow creates real activity. It generates calls, emails, showing requests. It creates buyers who make decisions based on that listing, who put other purchases on hold, who incur real costs. And it creates a paper trail of intent that has its own consequences, regardless of whether the sale ever went through. Mom's attorney, she called one from her hospital bed that same morning. A woman named Patricia, who had done her estate planning years ago and took the call within the hour, made this point clearly. The act of listing jointly owned property without the co-owner's knowledge or consent, with the apparent intent to complete a sale that would require forging or coercing that signature, was not just a civil matter. It had potential criminal dimensions depending on how far Derek had taken things with the realtor. Patricia asked one question. Had Derek told the realtor he had full authority to sell? Mom said she didn't know. Patricia said that's what we needed to find out. I called the realtor myself. I didn't pretend to be anyone I wasn't. I called as myself, identified myself as Carol's son and co-interested party in the property, and said I had some questions about the listing. The realtor, a woman named Chandra who worked for a mid-sized firm in Dayton, was professional and immediately sensed something was off about the call. I asked her what Derek had told her about his authority to sell. She paused in a way that told me something. He indicated he was managing the property on behalf of the owner, she said carefully. Did he mention there's a second owner on the deed? Silence. He did not, she said, and I could hear in her voice the specific sound of someone who has just realized they've been put in a very uncomfortable position through no fault of their own. I told her that the other owner, my mother, whose name had been on that deed for over 30 years, was currently in the hospital recovering from a cardiac procedure and had no knowledge of the listing until I found it on Zillow at 11 o'clock the night before. I told her Mom's attorney had been contacted that morning and would be following up. I told her I wasn't calling to cause her trouble and understood she'd been working in good faith. I also told her very politely that the listing needed to come down immediately and that any documentation of her communications with Derek should be preserved. She took it down within 2 hours. When Patricia followed up with Chandra's firm later that day, they were cooperative to the point of being eager. They had their own exposure to consider. By end of business, Patricia had a full packet of Derek's communications with the realtor, including 2 emails in which he had explicitly represented himself as having full authority to sell the property. No mention of a co-owner anywhere. That packet went into the folder. The folder was getting thick. Derek came to the hospital on Thursday. He didn't know I'd be there. I'd been staying at Mom's house and had kept that off our text thread intentionally. Derek, he walked in carrying a coffee and a paper bag from the bakery Mom likes, looking like a guy coming to check on his sick mother. And he found me sitting in the chair next to her bed with my laptop open and Patricia's business card on the tray table. He stopped in the doorway. Mom looked at him. She didn't say hello. She just looked at him with that quiet, focused anger and let the silence sit there for a moment. You should probably sit down, I said. He sat. He put the coffee and the bakery bag on the windowsill like they suddenly embarrassed him, which they should have. What followed was about 45 minutes of the most uncomfortable conversation I have ever sat through. Derek cycled through versions. He was protecting her interests. He was being proactive. He thought she understood what she'd signed. He was going to tell her. He was about to tell her he wasn't trying to do anything wrong. Mom listened to all of it without much expression. When he ran out of versions, she told him what was going to happen. He was going to sign a quitclaim deed, removing himself from the property. He was going to do it within 2 weeks, with Patricia present in front of a notary. He was going to have no further involvement in her finances, her property, or her medical decisions. If he chose not to cooperate, Patricia was prepared to file suit, and the communications he'd had with Chandra's firm were going to be part of that filing, along with a formal complaint to the county regarding the circumstances under which Mom had signed the original deed amendment. Derek looked at me. I think he expected me to soften it, offer a middle ground. That's historically been my role. The reasonable one, the mediator. I didn't say anything. I just looked back at him. "You've been building a case this whole time," he said, like it was an accusation. "Since about 11 p.m. on Tuesday," I said. He looked at the business card on the tray table. He looked at the laptop. He looked at Mom. "I was trying to help," he said. "One more time, quieter." Mom said, "I know you believe that." And the way she said it, not warm, not cold, just precise, made it very clear that what he believed was no longer her concern. He signed the quitclaim deed 9 days later. Patricia had it filed with the county recorder's office the same afternoon. Mom was discharged 6 days after that conversation in the hospital room, which means she came home to a house that was fully hers again, no asterisk, no complication, no Derek's name on any document anywhere in the chain of title. She walked in through the front door and stood in the entryway for a moment, just looking at the place. I stood behind her without saying anything. After a while, she went to the kitchen and put the kettle on like she'd been doing it every day for 30 years. Which she had. Derek and I haven't spoken since he walked out of that hospital room. I don't know what version of events lives in his head. I've had some nights where I sat with the complexity of it, the fact that he was there for her in ways I wasn't, that proximity and resentment are a real combination, that I don't think he started out planning to steal from our mother so much as he started out feeling entitled, and let that feeling take him somewhere it shouldn't have gone. None of that makes what he did okay. None of it changes what I know. What I know is this. I set up a Zillow Alert on my mom's house because I was anxious and couldn't sleep, and needed to feel like I was watching something. Turns out, I needed to be watching something, and when the alert came in at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, I didn't freeze and I didn't panic. I opened a folder on my desktop and I started filling it, one document at a time, until the picture was clear enough that no version of events Derek told could make it blurry again. That's the job. You watch the numbers, you build the file. You don't move until you have what you need, and when you do, you move. Mom's fine, by the way. Had her 6-month cardiac checkup last week. Numbers look good. She's been replanting the flower bed along the front porch, the one you could see in the Zillow listing photos Derek took without telling her. She dug out every single plant he'd been in there to water while she was sick. Said she wanted to start fresh. I think that about covers it. So guys, I'm glad you've listened to this far, and if you enjoyed this story, please support the channel with a like and subscribe. Also, check out my other interesting stories in the upcoming videos. See you later!